What you just heard are not sound effects. They are excerpts from official case files stored here in the Nightmare Log. Each one represents a breach in our understanding of reality, a moment where the documented and the impossible collided. Tonight, we are opening files related to the long-haul trucking industry and the forgotten stretches of asphalt that cross this continent. These 7 accounts have been cross-referenced with police reports, DOT manifests, eyewitness testimony, and in some cases, audio evidence that was never meant to be heard by the public. We will delve into the phenomena encountered by those who travel by night, who see the world from the isolated cockpit of a rig. They are the first and often only witnesses to what emerges from the dark places between destinations. What you are about to hear is a presentation of the facts as we have found them. Before we begin, ensure you are subscribed to the Nightmare Log and have notifications activated. The corridors we are about to walk down are not found on any map. What we uncover here is not for the faint of heart, and you won't want to miss what we discover next. Case File NML 811, The Shadow on 74. On October 17, 2018, at approximately 2:17 a.m., long-haul driver Frank Dobbs was heading east on Interstate 74 through central Illinois. He was piloting a forest green 2016 Peterbilt 579, hauling a load of automotive parts from Peoria to Indianapolis. The weather was clear, the road was empty, and Dobbs was alert, having just taken a scheduled break at the Williamsville way station. His logbook was current, and his rig was in perfect mechanical order. Dobbs first noted an anomaly in his side mirror. A pair of headlights had appeared a quarter-mile behind him, maintaining a consistent distance. This was not unusual. What was unusual was the character of the lights. They were described in his later statement as too bright, too blue-white, like old xenon bulbs, but sharper. They didn't illuminate the road around them. They were just 2 piercing points in the dark. Dobbs adjusted his mirror, assuming it was a new model sports car or a tricked-out pickup. Over the next 20 minutes, the vehicle did not alter its speed or attempt to pass, even as the highway opened to 2 lanes. Dobbs's unease grew. He attempted to make contact via his CB radio, unit handle green machine. "Hey, driver in the white rig back there, you got your 4s on me, or are we just sharing the road?" Only static replied. He then flashed his brake lights twice, a common signal. The vehicle responded by flashing its high beams 3 times in rapid succession, a pattern Dobbs did not recognize. The light was so intense it briefly lit the interior of his cab. He noted then that the headlights seemed to be set unusually high off the ground, higher than any production vehicle he knew of. A cold sensation, unrelated to the cab's climate control, began to creep down his spine. Growing increasingly anxious, Dobbs decided to force the issue. He slowly began to decrease his speed from 65 to 55 miles per hour. The vehicle behind him matched his deceleration exactly, maintaining the same precise following distance. Dobbs then accelerated back to 65. The vehicle accelerated in perfect, silent unison. His heart began to hammer in his chest. He grabbed his high-beam lever and flashed it once, a direct and unambiguous challenge. The response was immediate. The vehicle behind him extinguished its headlights completely, vanishing from view. But Dobbs could still see its shape in the moonlight, a tall, jagged silhouette that now seemed to be gaining on him in utter silence. It drew alongside his driver's side window. Dobbs, terrified, refused to look directly at it, keeping his eyes locked forward on the road. In his periphery, he could see only a formless, pitch-black shape that blotted out the stars, keeping perfect pace with his rig. A faint, metallic scraping sound, like wire bristles on steel, began to emanate from its direction. Frank Dobbs white-knuckled the wheel for 10 miles until he saw the lights of a 24-hour travel plaza. He did not look over once. He swerved into the plaza parking lot, screeching to a halt directly under the brightest bank of floodlights. He finally dared to look. The road behind him was empty. The thing was gone. Illinois State Police were called. They found no evidence of another vehicle on the road. Dobbs's rig, however, had fresh, deep scratches running the entire length of the driver's side trailer panel, scratches that exposed the bare metal beneath the paint. The official report lists the incident as possible road rage or a prank that escalated. The nightmare log has classified it as a confirmed encounter with a Class 3 phantom vehicle designated the Stalker. It has been linked to 17 similar incidents on I-74 between Champaign and the Indiana state line. But the loneliness of the interstate is not the only thing that preys on the minds of drivers. Sometimes, the threat does not come from the road itself, but from a destination that should mean safety. Our next case takes us to a way station that was anything but routine. Case file NML 919. The way station at Jericho Creek. On the night of February 3, 2021, driver Maria Flores was southbound on U.S. Route 83 in West Texas, nearing the end of a grueling run from Denver to Laredo. She was operating a blue Volvo VNL 860, hauling refrigerated goods. Fatigue was setting in, and the blinking light of a mandatory way station ahead, identified as the Jericho Creek facility, was a welcome sight. She planned to park for a few hours of rest after her inspection. The station was well lit but appeared quiet. A single yellow light spun slowly over the main inspection bay. She pulled her rig onto the scale and rolled down her window, expecting to see a DOT officer. No one approached her vehicle. The scale's digital readout flashed, "Proceed to Bay 1." Maria complied, pulling forward into the designated, brightly lit bay. The large garage door immediately began to descend behind her, sealing her inside with a definitive, echoing clang. She assumed it was automated, perhaps due to the late hour. The bay was spotless, almost sterile, and silent except for the low hum of the fluorescent lights above. Still, no officers appeared. Over the PA system, a calm, synthesized voice spoke. "Please exit the vehicle for a Level 3 inspection. Bring your logbook and bill of lading." Maria felt a prickle of unease. A Level 3 inspection is a full driver and paperwork review, which requires an officer to be present. She grabbed her documents and stepped out of the truck. The air in the bay was cold and still, smelling faintly of antiseptic. "Hello," she called out. Her voice echoed in the vast space. The synthesized voice came again from a speaker above the office door. "Please proceed to the inspection room." The door to the small, windowed office was slightly ajar. Maria pushed it open. The room was empty. A computer monitor was on, displaying a screensaver of a black field with a single, slowly pulsating white. On the desk was a styrofoam cup of coffee, still steaming. A wave of primal dread washed over her. She turned to leave, but the office door swung shut behind her with a soft click. She was now locked in the small room. The PA system crackled to life once more, but this time the voice was different. It was a distorted whisper, layered over itself, that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It said, "We have been reviewing your manifest, Maria Flores. The weight of your cargo is incorrect." Outside, in the main bay, she heard the distinct sound of her trailer's reefer unit powering down. Then, the heavy thud of its rear doors being unlocked from the outside. Maria backed into a corner of the office, her breath catching in her throat. She watched in utter horror as the doorknob to the office began to jiggle, then turned slowly. It wasn't trying to get in. It was testing the lock. From the gap under the door, a thick, dark liquid began to seep inward, creeping across the linoleum floor towards her boots. It smelled of copper and damp soil. Maria used a chair to smash the office window and climbed out, cutting her hands on the glass. She sprinted to her truck, started it, and smashed through the closed bay door, causing significant damage to her rig. She drove for 50 miles without stopping before calling her company and then the police. State troopers dispatched to the Jericho Creek Way Station found it dark, abandoned, and officially decommissioned since 2015. There was no power, no spinning yellow light, and no evidence of recent activity. The bay door Maria destroyed was rusted shut. However, in the inspection bay, they found Maria's logbook and bill of lading neatly placed in the center of the floor. And on the concrete next to them, a single, fresh footprint, far too large to be human. The official report attributes the incident to driver fatigue and a hallucinatory episode, with damage to state property noted. The nightmare log has classified the Jericho Creek Station as a confirmed temporal anomaly and potential feeding ground. All drivers are advised to bypass this location, regardless of its status on official maps. Case file NML 702, The Red-Eyed Hitchhiker. On November 2, 2019, veteran driver Leo Bud Carlson was navigating a notoriously lonely stretch of U.S. Route 191 in northern Arizona. It was 3:45 a.m., and he was driving a maroon Kenworth W900, empty after a drop-off in Page, heading back to Flagstaff. The landscape was a vast, moonlit expanse of desert and rock, broken only by the twin cones of his headlights. The CB radio had been silent for hours, and the only sound was the low drone of his engine and the whine of the wind. Carlson was a man of routine and skepticism, with over 30 years of accident-free driving. A figure suddenly appeared at the edge of his headlights, standing motionless on the shoulder. Carlson eased off the accelerator. It was a young man, dressed in jeans and a dark jacket, his thumb held out. Despite the hour and the remote location, Carlson's ingrained habit of caution was overruled by a deeper concern. It was freezing outside, and the next town was 60 miles away. He sighed, downshifted, and brought the rig to a hissing stop about 50 yards past the figure. He checked his side mirror, expecting to see the man jogging to catch up. The hitchhiker was not running. He was walking at a normal, unhurried pace. As he drew closer under the glow of the truck's marker lights, Carlson noted his features were oddly indistinct, as if seen through a faint haze. The man reached the passenger door, but made no move to open it or knock. He simply stood there, looking up at the window. Carlson, feeling a twinge of unease, rolled the passenger window down a crack. "You need a ride or not, son?" The hitchhiker didn't speak. He merely nodded once, a slow, deliberate motion. In the dim light, Carlson saw that the man's eyes were covered by a pair of outdated, mirrored sunglasses. "Get in," Carlson said, hitting the door unlock. The sound echoed loudly in the cab. The hitchhiker pulled the door open and climbed into the passenger seat in one fluid, silent motion. He placed his hands on his knees and stared directly ahead. He carried no bag, and he brought with him the scent of cold, dry stone. Carlson put the truck in gear and pulled back onto the blacktop. The silence in the cab became oppressive. After 5 minutes, he couldn't stand it. "Name's Bud. You're lucky I came along. Not many folks out here this time of night." The hitchhiker did not turn his head. He spoke in a flat, monotone voice that seemed to lack any inflection of breath. "I am always here." Carlson glanced over, his knuckles tightening on the wheel. The hitchhiker slowly reached up and removed his sunglasses. In the reflected green light of the dashboard, Carlson saw that the man had no eyes. Where they should have been were two deep, hollow sockets, each containing a single, faintly pulsating ember of deep, hellish red light. The thing turned its head fully toward him, and the voice spoke again, this time directly into his mind. "You are always here." Leo Carlson slammed on the brakes. The rig skidded to a halt on the shoulder. He squeezed his eyes shut, praying, and when he opened them, the passenger seat was empty. The door was still closed and locked. The only thing that remained was the faint smell of ozone and scorched metal. He drove the remaining miles to Flagstaff at maximum speed, never once looking at the passenger seat. He reported nothing to the police, fearing professional ridicule. He submitted his resignation to his company the next morning and never drove a long-haul route again. The official record shows only that driver Carlson resigned for personal reasons. The Nightmare Log, after interviewing him and cross-referencing his account with 12 others from the same stretch of road, has classified this as an encounter with a Class 1 cognitive entity, a parasitic phenomenon that feeds on fear and dislocation. The entity, designated the passenger, is considered active and extremely dangerous. Some encounters are brief, a fleeting terror in the night. Others are not. Some become a prolonged siege, a battle of attrition fought within the four walls of a cab, where the only thing more terrifying than what is outside is the realization that you might never leave. Our next case is not an encounter, but an entrapment. Case file NML 558, The Neverending Road. On the evening of March 12, 2020, driver Chloe Bennett was transporting a load of household goods from Boise, Idaho, to Missoula, Montana, via State Highway 55 and then I-90. She was driving a white Freightliner Cascadia. The trip was straightforward, estimated at just under 6 hours. She departed at 7 p.m. The weather was clear, her GPS signal was strong, and traffic was light. She crossed into Montana and merged onto I-90 East just after 10:30 p.m. She estimated her arrival in Missoula around 1 a.m. The first sign of trouble was her GPS. The estimated arrival time, which had been steadily counting down, suddenly froze at 12:47 a.m. Then, the map on her dashboard screen began to glitch, the road ahead pixelating and distorting before the unit reset itself entirely. Annoyed, Chloe pulled out her personal cell phone. It showed no service. She shrugged it off as a dead zone in the mountains. She decided to rely on mile markers. She passed a green sign, Missoula 67 miles. She settled in, noting the time, 11:05 p.m. After what felt like 20 minutes of driving, Chloe glanced at the next mile marker. It read Missoula 66 miles. She had only gone 1 mile. That was impossible. She was maintaining a steady 68 miles per hour. A cold knot formed in her stomach. She pressed harder on the accelerator, pushing the rig to 75. The landscape outside, which should have been rolling mountains, seemed static, frozen in the monochrome of the moonlight. She passed another marker, Missoula 65 miles. She checked the clock on her dash. It was now 11:45 p.m. 40 minutes had passed. She should have covered nearly 50 miles, not 2. Her breath began to fog the inside of the windshield. The temperature in the cab was plummeting. She tried her CB. Breaker 19, is anyone out there? I think I'm lost on I-90 eastbound. The only reply was a low, droning hum that seemed to absorb her own voice. Panic set in. Chloe was now driving erratically, alternating between flooring the accelerator and slamming on the brakes, hoping to break whatever spell she was under. It made no difference. The mile markers continued their agonizing, illogical countdown. 64, 63, 62. The signs were the only things changing in an otherwise static world. Her fuel gauge, which had been over half full, was now dipping below a quarter. She had been driving for over 2 hours and had only advanced 5 miles. She was crying, her hands shaking on the wheel. Then she saw it. Ahead on the shoulder was her own rig, the white Freightliner Cascadia, parked exactly as if she were seeing her own reflection. And in the driver's seat, she could make out a figure, herself, pounding on the window, her face a mask of silent, terrified screams. Chloe Bennett closed her eyes, screamed, and let go of the wheel. She felt a massive impact, the sound of tearing metal and shattering glass. When she opened her eyes, she was in a ditch on the side of I-90. Her cab was crumpled against a pine tree. The sun was rising. A state trooper was knocking on her window. She was 71 miles west of Missoula. Her logbook and GPS data confirmed she had left Boise the previous evening. But according to the trooper's report, her engine was cold to the touch, as if it had been off for hours. The crash was minor, but the state of the driver was not. She was treated for severe shock and dehydration, as if she had been driving for days, not hours. The official report lists the cause as driver fatigue leading to a single vehicle accident. The nightmare log, after analyzing the paradoxical physical evidence and its similarity to 9 other cases on interstate highways, has classified this as a topological anomaly, a self-contained loop in spacetime known as a highway Ouroboros. Entry into and exit from these loops appears to be random, and survival is not guaranteed. Case File NML 443, the last broadcast of WBZ 897. On the frigid night of January 8, 2022, driver Samir Patel was battling a worsening blizzard on Interstate 87 in upstate New York, just south of the Canadian border. He was at the wheel of a navy blue International LT, hauling a load of perishable goods that was rapidly becoming irrelevant against the storm. Visibility was near zero, and the wind rocked the tall trailer. Patel, a cautious driver, had reduced his speed to a crawl and was scanning the dial for weather band updates. The local stations were fading in and out through the static of the storm. As he passed a sign for exit 41, a frequency he hadn't tried before broke through the white noise with startling clarity. It identified itself as WBZ 897, the North Country's voice in the storm. The broadcaster's voice was calm, warm, and folksy, a deep, reassuring baritone. And if you're out on the roads tonight, folks, you best hunker down. They're calling this one the worst in 50 years. But don't you worry. We'll be here all night, playing the hits and keeping you company. Patel felt a wave of relief. He locked the frequency in. For the next 20 minutes, the station was a lifeline. The broadcaster, who called himself Big Ben, played classic rock and gave periodic, incredibly specific weather reports. Now, for you big rigs out there, I see one. Yeah, a blue International. You're about 2 miles south of the Scroon River Bridge. The road is clear for the next half mile. Then you'll hit a nasty patch of black ice. Slower down now. Patel's blood ran cold. He was driving a blue International. He was approximately 2 miles from that bridge. It was an astonishing coincidence, a testament to some hidden DOT camera system, he told himself. The song ended, and Big Ben came back on. His voice was still warm, but the tone had shifted slightly, calling that blue International again. Samir Patel, your mother in Jersey City says to be careful. She's thinking of you right now. Samir gripped the wheel. How did he know his name? His mother's name? His city? A prank. A hacker on the radio. It had to be. The broadcaster's next words were not spoken to the audience. They were spoken directly to him. The folksy tone was gone, replaced by a cold, intimate whisper that seemed to emanate from the passenger seat itself. You're not listening, Samir. You need to pull over. Right now. Not at the next exit. Right here. Right on the shoulder. Outside, the blizzard raged. Pulling over was a death sentence. No, Samir whispered to the empty cab. Terrified, Samir Patel slammed his fist on the radio, powering it off. The sudden silence in the cab was more terrifying than the voice. He drove for another mile in petrified silence before the radio blasted back on at full volume, emitting a deafening screech of feedback and screaming voices. Through it, the voice of Big Ben roared, "You should have listened." At that exact moment, a figure, a tall, slender shape made of swirling snow and shadow, materialized directly in his headlights. Samir swerved, losing control on the ice. His rig jackknifed and slid into the deep ditch along the shoulder. He was knocked unconscious. He was found 4 hours later by a snowplow driver. He survived with minor injuries. A search of FCC databases found no record of a station with the call sign WBZ 897 and no broadcaster named Big Ben working in the North Country. The official accident report cites weather as the sole cause. The Nightmare Log, however, has classified this as a predatory auditory manifestation or siren signal. These entities are believed to use broadcast frequencies to lure and disorient victims, often appearing during periods of extreme isolation or vulnerability. The entity, designated Big Ben, remains at large on the airwaves. A voice on the radio can promise companionship, only to reveal a predatory intent. But some threats are far more tangible. They do not whisper or hide in the static. They hunt in plain sight, using the most innocent of forms to bypass our defenses. Our next case did not occur on a dark, empty road, but under the bright lights of a truck stop swarming with people. Case file NML 126. The Smiling Boy at the Crossroads Diner. At 8:15 p.m. on July 22, 2019, driver Hank Wilcox pulled his Western Star 5700 into the Crossroads Diner and Truck Stop just outside Joplin, Missouri. It was a sprawling, well-lit complex buzzing with activity, a familiar and welcome sight. Wilcox was tired and hungry after a 10-hour drive. He parked among dozens of other rigs, gave us a quick visual inspection, and headed inside for a hot meal. The diner was crowded with families, truckers, and waitresses rushing between tables. The air smelled of grease, coffee, and rain. As he waited for his steak and eggs, Wilcox noticed a young boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, sitting alone in a booth in the corner. The boy was staring directly at him. He had neatly combed blonde hair and was wearing a clean, old-fashioned sweater vest. Wilcox, a grandfather himself, offered a small, friendly wave. The boy did not wave back. Instead, his face split into an enormous, unnervingly wide smile. It was a smile that showed too many teeth and did not touch his eyes, which remained dark and vacant. Wilcox felt a sudden, inexplicable chill and quickly looked away, dismissing it as a strange kid being a strange kid. When his food arrived, Wilcox kept his head down, but he could feel the boy's gaze burning into him. Every time he glanced up, the boy was still there, still staring, that same plastic smile fixed on his face. The chatter of the diner seemed to fade into the background, leaving only the uncomfortable silence of that stare. Wilcox noticed something else. No one in the busy diner interacted with the boy. No parent called his name. No waitress took his order. It was as if he were invisible to everyone but Wilcox. He finished his meal quickly, his appetite gone. As he stood to leave, he looked one last time at the corner booth. It was empty. A wave of relief washed over him. It was just his imagination. Wilcox paid his bill and walked back out into the humid night air. The parking lot was still full. As he approached his truck, his relief curdled into dread. There, sitting on the top step of the chrome boarding ladder to his cab, was the little boy. His legs were swinging cheerfully. He was no longer smiling. His expression was now one of cold, ancient curiosity. Wilcox stopped dead, his keys clenched in his fist. "You need to get down from there, son. Where are your parents?" The boy tilted his head. When he spoke, his voice was not that of a child. It was a dry, rasping, multi-layered sound, like many voices speaking at once. "This one is clean. It will do." The boy then hopped down from the step and pointed a single, pale finger not at Wilcox, but at his trailer. "We will be waiting for you. In the dark. Where the eyes don't go." Then, He simply wasn't there. There was no blur of movement. 1 second, he was standing on the asphalt. The next, he was gone. Hank Wilcox refused to hook up his trailer. He called his company in a panic, demanding a local tow and a different trailer be brought in, refusing to give a coherent explanation. The local sheriff's department was called. They found Wilcox in a state of extreme agitation, but could find no evidence of a child matching his description in the diner or on security footage. The footage from Wilcox's own dashcam was corrupted, showing only hours of grainy, unusable static for the precise time of the incident. Wilcox was given a citation for causing a disturbance and was forced by his company to take a mandatory psychological evaluation. The official report suggests Wilcox experienced a transient stress-induced episode. The nightmare log, after correlating this account with 7 others from truck stops along I-44, has classified the smiling boy as a Class 2 observational entity, a scout for something far larger and more malevolent. Its purpose appears to be to identify and mark targets for later acquisition. The fate of those who are marked is unknown, as no driver who has reported such an encounter has ever been found after their next departure. Case File NML 010, The Thing That Followed Me Home. This final entry is unique in the nightmare log. It is not a single, contained incident, but an ongoing case. The subject is Elias Vance, a driver with a spotless 30-year record, now retired. His account was provided over 3 separate interviews and is supported by photographic evidence, audio recordings, and sworn affidavits from his family. His story does not end at a destination. It leaked out from the road and infiltrated his life, proving that some things, once encountered, cannot be left behind. On the night of September 30th, 2023, Elias Vance was on his last run before retirement, driving a silver Kenworth T680 through the Cascade Mountains of Oregon on Highway 20. It was his victory lap. Nearing the summit of Santiam Pass, a thick, sudden fog bank rolled across the road, reducing visibility to mere feet. Vance slowed to a stop, planning to wait it out. As he sat in the silent, gray cocoon, he heard a sound. Thump. A single, heavy impact against the side of his trailer. He assumed it was a falling branch from the dense forest. Then it came again. Thump. Thump. Not random. A slow, deliberate, rhythmic pounding, moving from the rear of the trailer toward the cab. Vance grabbed his CB mic. "Hey, if there's another driver out there, signal me. You okay?" The pounding stopped. The only reply was the faint, wet sound of something heavy dragging itself through the gravel on the shoulder beside his truck. His blood went cold. He threw the rig into gear and began to creep forward, his heart hammering against his ribs. The fog was impenetrable. In his side mirror, he saw a shape, a tall, hunched, bipedal form, keeping pace with him effortlessly. It was indistinct, a smear of darker gray in the fog, but he could make out elongated, spindly limbs. It matched his speed perfectly for a quarter of a mile before melting back into the trees. Vance didn't stop driving until he was clear of the mountains and the sun was up. He thought it was over. He delivered his load, attended his retirement party, and settled into life at his remote property outside Sisters, Oregon. A week later, his wife, Clara, asked him why he'd been walking around the house so late the night before. He hadn't. She described hearing heavy, dragging footsteps on their wraparound porch and seeing a tall, distorted shadow through the bedroom window. Elias checked the perimeter. There were no footprints in the damp soil, but there was a long, deep scratch in the wood of the porch railing, and high up on the window pane, at a height of over 7 feet, was a single, greasy smudge. That night, Elias set up a wildlife camera pointed at the tree line. The next morning, the camera was gone. In its place was a small, dead animal, arranged in a grotesque, geometric pattern. The horror was no longer on the road. It was in his yard. The incidents escalated. Their dogs vanished without a sound. Strange, sulfurous odors would waft through the house at night. The thing never showed itself fully, but its presence was a constant, oppressive weight. It was toying with them. Elias contacted local authorities, who were dismissive. He reached out to former colleagues, and one mentioned the nightmare log. Our investigators were dispatched. We recorded Class 3 electromagnetic fluctuations around the property and captured several audio phenomena: the dragging sound, the low, rhythmic pounding, and on one recording, a voice whispering Elias's name in a dry, rasping croak. The Vance family, on our advice, has since relocated. Elias asked us to include his story as a warning. The official reports list missing pets and probable vandalism. The nightmare log has classified this as a Tier 1 persistent attachment. The entity, which displays a terrifying level of intelligence and patience, is believed to have formed a parasitic bond with Mr. Vance during the initial encounter on Highway 20. It is not tied to a location, but to a person. Its motivations are unknown. Its capabilities are not fully understood. The case of Elias Vance remains open and active. The thing that followed him home is still out there, and it is still looking for him. Frank Dobbs, on I-74, pursued by a darkness that left its mark on steel. Maria Flores, sealed inside a way station that time forgot. Leo Carlson, who gave a ride to a passenger with hell in its eyes. Chloe Bennett, trapped on a road that folded back on itself in an impossible loop. Samir Patel, hunted by a voice on the airwaves that knew his name. Hank Wilcox, marked for a terrible purpose by a smiling child in a crowded room. And Elias Vance, who brought something home. These 7 cases from the log, spanning thousands of miles and years of testimony, demonstrate a terrifying and consistent truth. The darkness that haunts America's deadliest roads is not a simple ghost story. It is intelligent. It is adaptive. It is predatory. It manifests as phantom vehicles, as temporal anomalies, as parasitic signals and deceptive forms. It preys on isolation, on fatigue, on the very human need for companionship in the vast, empty spaces between here and there. The world is not as safe as we are led to believe. The truth is often hidden in plain sight, in the places we trust most. The familiar hum of the interstate, the welcome lights of a truck stop, the voice on the radio promising help. The most dangerous monsters are not the ones that lurk in the shadows, but the ones who know how to step into the light and mimic it. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. If a voice on the radio knows your name, turn it off. If a face in the crowd doesn't look right, look away. Believe the testimony of those who have stared into the abyss and lived to tell the tale. The stories are the only warning we will ever get. If you have encountered something on the road, a stretch of highway that felt wrong, a face you can't forget, a signal that shouldn't exist, describe it in the comments below. Your story could be the key to a future investigation. Your account could be the one that saves the next driver. Subscribe to the Nightmare Log and hit the notification bell. Our archives are deep, and the truth within them is waiting to be heard. Stay vigilant. This has been a presentation from the Nightmare Log. Until next time, try to sleep.